What's up, YouTube? The kids tell me that whenever you start a YouTube video, you got to, what's up with YouTube? It's the kids tell me. I don't know if I believe the kids. It could be leading me astray. Today is a civics lesson. Little civics lesson. I promise it's going to be fun. Do you believe me? Yeah. I didn't think so. From the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary at the foot of Mount Belzoni, this is the Triangle Talk Show. And it is episode 67. Yeah, it's the civics lesson that I promised you. My vote counts, right? Right. Today is Thursday, August 14th, 2019. I am Gary Pierce. I am a registered voter in Wake County. I am registered unaffiliated. You can look it up. It's a matter of public record. The Triangle Talk Show is a podcast. It is also a YouTube show. It's for the Triangle area of North Carolina. We cover anything we want to. Some progressive politics, not all politics. Our website is triangletalkshow.com. Got a Facebook group, also named Triangle Talk Show. We are at Talk Triangle on the Twitter machine. I don't go there very often. Can't take the Twitter machine. On YouTube, we're still sitting at 50 subscribers. We were at 51 for a day or two, and then we lost one. Can't afford to lose any. We need 100 YouTube subscribers to get our customized YouTube URL that would be youtube.com/Triangle Talk Show instead of youtube.com and about 50 gibberish lines. So please subscribe. I expect all of the members of the League of Women Voters of Wake County to subscribe. That'll get us over 100. Then you can go away after that. Expect you to do that. The Triangle Talk Show is also really just a vanity project of me, Gary Pierce. Although we seem to be fooling some people into thinking that maybe this is something worthwhile. For example, I can leak that I recently recorded a show interviewing the editor of Cary magazine. I'm holding that show until their September issue hits the racks. And that should be about September 1st, maybe August 30th or so. Because there's going to be a story in it about the Triangle Talk Show in that issue. No, it's not going to be a cover story. A little story along with a bunch of other podcasts. But we had a good time recording that. And I interviewed her and she interviewed me, and you'll see that coming up. All right, on this show, the very first presidential election that I got to vote in was in 1972, Nixon versus McGovern. I voted for McGovern. I was the one. I remember voting on a strange mechanical monstrosity. Oh, no, I didn't want more music. Holy cow, I've lost control of the program. I remember voting on this strange mechanical monstrosity. It had a lever. There was a curtain that closed behind me when I pulled the lever, and I pushed these little levers up or down depending on how I wanted to mark my choice. Something like the picture that you're seeing if you're looking at the video. And when I was done, I pulled the big lever back the other way. All the little levers were cleared. My vote was recorded. I guess. I had no way of knowing. I think levers went back up and the curtain opened and Wizard of Oz was not standing behind it. And I'm assuming my vote got recorded. I don't know. I don't remember much about the machinery that I used to vote in any of the elections since then until I got to North Carolina. That was back in 1990. The first presidential election that I voted in North Carolina was 1992. That was Bill Clinton versus George H.W. Bush. I don't remember what that technology was like either here in Wake County. But somewhere along the line, I found myself marking a paper ballot. You fill in the little circle next to the candidate that you want to vote for. And I remember thinking, well, this seems pretty low tech, especially compared to, that first mechanical machine that I used back in 1972. It was just a curiosity until this past year when we all started to worry about election security. And part of that is, how secure are the voting machines that we use? Can they be hacked? Can we trace how voters actually voted without just trusting the machines? Because remember this one? The lever's all cleared. I have no idea what happened after that. And it turns out that low-tech paper ballot that we use in Wake County and in Durham County is pretty secure. But around the rest of North Carolina and much of the rest of the United States, that is not necessarily the case. Some of the more advanced voting machines leave no human-readable paper trail to review. Not surprisingly, there's some politics involved in fixing that. North Carolina is supposed to be selecting some new vendors for voting machines that replace the ones that don't leave a good audit trail. The process seems to have stalled. Fortunately, the League of Women Voters of Wake County is keeping a close eye on it. They're actively advocating for improving the process, and one of their members, who has been right in the middle of the process, is here in the studio in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary at the foot of Mount Belzoni to help us understand what's going on. Lynn Bernstein, welcome to the Triangle Talk Show.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. I read a newspaper story where you described yourself as an aerospace engineer.
That is correct. I spent a lot of time doing integration and tests specifically in the aerospace field.
Cool. Right here in the Triangle.
It was back in Colorado for Ball Aerospace.
Okay. What do you do now?
Right now, I work on election security mostly. I thought about going back to work once my kids were a bit older and got completely sucked into this. And this is it for me now. This is what I do.
So you're a rocket scientist?
Yeah.
Aerospace is not all rocketry.
Correct. But yeah.
We're going to call you a rocket scientist.
Okay.
Well, your title says aerospace engineer. Right. That sounds pretty cool. And so you're comfortable with all this geeky stuff that's surrounding you here in the
I love it. I love technology.
This clutter. Okay, so what's the current situation in North Carolina in voting machine stuff? And it's 11:15. We promised to keep this to an hour.
Right. Right. So right now I've learned quite a bit about the process of what's going on. The League of Women Voters, we have an election protection committee that I'm a member of, and we're doing a lot of work, not just with voting machines, but also with voter ID and gerrymandering and things like that. But my geekiness tends to put me right in the middle of looking at all the technology. So North Carolina right now, they're going to be certifying new equipment. So some of that equipment is, I guess if you think about it this way, there are different ways to mark your ballot. Just as you described earlier, there are machines that have no paper trail, but those also counted votes as well. You mark and count the vote on that. North Carolina is looking at various ways to mark your ballot, and then we're all pretty much going to be counting our ballot through the same method. So really what's at issue is how we mark our ballot. Now, most people in their desk drawer have the best ballot marking device.
Pencil.
A pen. Yeah, a pen is the best ballot marking device. Turns out it's also the cheapest way.
So if you do it with a pen, that's sort of permanent. I guess if I go to vote and I screw it up, what do they give me, a whole new ballot?
Yeah, you can get a new ballot. And I worked in my precinct, and there was one voter, and he needed 3 or 4 ballots, and it's fine. I mean, you want people to take their time and. Yeah. And
so they let me keep the old one for reference until I finish?
No, we have to keep track of those. We have to keep track of every ballot that goes in and out to make sure.
I mean, not forever, but long enough to say, okay, no, I voted for this guy for water and soil commissioner.
No, actually, we take that ballot.
Okay, so if you find you screw up,
right?
Can you go into the voting booth these days with? At one point, they said you can't take your phone. I think there still may even be a sign. My phone's got my research. It's got my list.
The rule this last election was that you could take your phone into the voting booth to do research. You could take a piece of paper with a sample ballot if you wanted. You could not talk on your phone or take photographs. That was the limitation there.
Okay. Because we all know secret ways of taking photographs people can't tell.
Yeah, I mean, most people went in there just to use them, I think, for
research.
For research.
Okay. All right. So where do things stand now? We're in the process. We're in the middle of figuring this out.
Right. So North Carolina, the State Board of Elections is going to decide on August 23rd at 1 p.m. in the Dobbs building in downtown Raleigh which systems to certify. And there are two kind of types of system. One is a system that produces a ballot that looks like everyone else's hand-marked paper ballot. And those machines would be great for people who have disabilities, say. There's also a machine marking ballot system where it produces a barcode. So it doesn't look like any of the other ballots. In fact, it's not even the same size as the other ballots. It has a barcode on the top and a list of your selections at the bottom. The only problem with that, well, there are several problems, but especially since a pen is cheaper, and paper can't be hacked. So we want people to hand mark. But that barcode ballot, when you put that through the tabulator, it ignores any of the voter verifiable marks. So the people's names or anything you've selected, that gets ignored, and only the barcode is read. So in North Carolina, there is a statute that says a voter must be able to correct any discrepancy on their ballot before they cast their vote. And I have a real problem with that because despite loving technology, I can't read barcode. And so I can't actually check and see if my ballot reflects my selections.
So let's see if I understand this correctly.
Right.
We're down to two different technologies that they're going to be deciding on?
Three vendors, but yeah, two of the vendors have what looks like a standard ballot with the bubbles.
Okay. And you're actually filling the bubble in with the pen.
So this would be so it's interesting. So there are two types of ways to vote: on a machine or on a hand-marked paper ballot. Now, the League of Women Voters, we agree with all the experts and elections experts and cybersecurity experts that hand-marked paper ballots are the best method of voting. But we also need to purchase some machines for people who are physically unable to mark their ballot.
Okay, so the general area of accessibility, they call it.
Accessibility, right. So we have to provide some means for voters to essentially have an assisted way to vote. And there are two different types. There's a barcode ballot and a non-barcode ballot. So that's sort of where it breaks down.
Okay, how does the barcode work? I sort of remember, and I think this happens as you're getting as you're checking in, you pull a barcode, peel a barcode
right
off and stick it somewhere.
So that's a little different. That's when you check in, they're making sure that you have the correct ballot type. That barcode that is on the top of your ballot really just shows what ballot you have.
So how does the actual voting using a barcode work?
Okay, so a voter would check in, they would go to one of these ballot marking devices. We're hoping that most voters in North Carolina will use hand-marked paper, but if they need to use a machine, they would make their selections on the machine, and then what would print out is a ballot that then they can put into the tabulator. The barcode ballot, and I think I gave you a copy of it there, at the very top of it, so those are two separate ones there, two different samples, and you can see at the very top there are barcodes, and then at the bottom is just it's a summary. So even some of the names are truncated. It just says issue 1, I voted no on. Issue 2. So
just a big bunch of barcodes.
A bunch of barcodes, right.
And the names are down here.
Correct.
And how do you connect them?
Well, the voter can't.
So how do I actually make my vote?
So you'd make your vote on a computer screen, at either a touch screen or they have sip and puff, braille, various ways for people to vote. And you'd hit, vote, and out would print this paper. And then that paper would actually go into the same tabulator, the same counter that the hand-marked paper ballots go into. One of the other issues with the barcode...
And all it would print out would be the barcodes.
No, both of those print out. So the voter they tell the voter, check your selections, make sure that those are okay.
But I can't read barcodes.
Correct.
And so,
you see the problem.
How does the voter associate a barcode with a name?
They cannot.
Can't.
You're physically unable to do it.
They tell you to check.
They tell you to check.
And there's no way to check.
And there's no way to check. That is correct.
Doesn't sound at all like government to me.
I think one of the things is that, voters right now are suspicious. They want to go and they want to make sure their votes count. And when they see a barcode or something that looks out of the ordinary, they start questioning things. And what we really want are people to confidently go to the polls, mark their ballot by hand, and know that when they walk out of there, that their vote has counted.
You say that they start questioning things.
Yes.
And a few of them may, but most of them aren't going to.
Well, NPR did a survey, and this was all voters on either side of the aisle. They were both suspicious that the other side was cheating. So, it really does affect all voters. Voters, I think, also with the amount of information that's in the media right now about hacking and all this, DEF CON just happened with Voting Village. People are suspicious. People are, not as confident, I think, as they used to be.
You mentioned DEF CON and the Voting Village. That probably most people, unless they read the technical press, don't know anything about that.
True.
It's a hacker convention.
Right.
Out in Las Vegas every year. Mm-hmm. Serious computer hackers.
Right.
People, these are the white hat hackers, the good guys. Mm-hmm. They go out there, and their whole goal is to demonstrate how they can hack into things.
Right.
Like Google.
Right. Exactly.
I don't think Google's been successfully hacked, have they?
I'm not sure about that.
I don't think so. But they, all of this stuff where we hear our credit card numbers have been stolen, that's what they're demonstrating can be hacked.
Right. So, I think it's interesting because the way that they get those voting machines is they buy them on eBay. They purchase them secondhand.
Yeah. So part of this conference is the Voting Village.
The Voting Village, right. Yeah. So that only got started 3 years ago. They've started collecting voting equipment. Unfortunately, some of the newer equipment, the vendors are not willing to allow them to be hacked. Right. So it's really actually the Voting Village, despite some of the problems with the setups maybe aren't to real life. Part of the benefit of that is that the EAC and what we test are really just logic and accuracy testing. So we check, does it work in this mode the way it's supposed to? So really it's just a functional test that gets performed on these machines. There's really no regulation that says that they have to do a penetration testing. Can this be hacked? Any sort of security testing? It's really just functionality testing. So, I think it is important to highlight that, yes, any machine can be hacked, which is why we really are advocating for hand-marked paper ballots.
So it's North Carolina. It's our Board of Elections that is not worried about hacking.
I wouldn't say that they're not worried about hacking because I think
they're not
that
doing
they really
anything
are.
About it.
I think they're doing more than just like you said, the technical part of it. So even in Durham with the voter rolls going down, we have given that to DHS. All those computers have been imaged, and the FBI is looking at them. So that is being done, despite what's sort of out there.
Well, I was looking at the going into things as opposed to coming out of things. Looking at these new machines,
right?
They're not looking for the least hackable,
right? So in some ways, I guess I'm just not sure how they're coming about this decision, and that was one of the things that when I went, I just went as a voter to these Board of Elections meetings, and I asked the board several times, okay, you have the information that shows that experts are saying use hand-marked paper, elections experts are saying hand-marked paper. What information do you have that is showing to use these machines that are more expensive and hackable? And they really could not give me an answer. I think they were maybe more listening to the vendors and than listening to the people who showed up to voice their opinion and the experts.
So that's the little question that's been floating in the back of my mind since you started describing this. We've got various methods of doing things. Some are lower tech,
right.
Some are higher tech.
Right.
I assume, as you said, more expensive, less expensive. Why? Why are manufacturing companies standing on their heads to make complicated machines when they don't have to?
They want to make money. I mean, it's a lot. They can make a lot more money selling equipment, training people on equipment, upgrading software, the storage of those things. I'll just give you an example. So a pen, just a regular ballpoint pen, is about 8 cents if you buy them, for a pack of 50. I'm sure you could get them a lot cheaper. One of those ballot marking machines that really just marks your ballot, it doesn't count your ballot, it just marks it, is about $3,500 a piece. And that doesn't even include software upgrades, storage, all that other stuff. Now, when you think about a 12-hour shift on election day, and if a voter is taking approximately 6 minutes to cast their vote on that machine, you can only get 120 people voting on that machine per day. And that's if it's running
That's
smoothly.
your fancy machine.
Right.
Your $3,000 machine.
So there are groups that are upset about these machines, not just because of the hackability issue, but also because this is going to create longer lines. Right. I mean, if only 120 people can vote on a machine, and that's, pretty quick in and out, that county has to buy a lot of machines for those voters. And there are instances in other states where it turns out that some counties are maybe intentionally not purchasing enough machines to
so
disenfranchise
politics is now
voters.
raising its ugly head.
Right. So hand-marked paper really does give everyone equal footing because, for instance, at our precinct, we vote in a church here in Cary, and the line was backing up, and our head judge had enough sense to look around and say, oh, wait, there are a couple tables sitting in the corner. Let's pull those out and put those in a corner. People can go vote there. And within about 20 minutes, we had that line flowing again. And so, we had one guy on a clipboard voting. He said, I don't want to wait for one of the booths. I'll just vote on a clipboard in the corner.
Yeah. If you do early voting in Cary, you end up with a giant room full of simple tables to mark your ballots on. You have dozens and dozens of them.
Right. Yeah, they're easily transportable. You don't have to worry about the power going out. I mean, it really is no-brainer.
One machine that you eventually stick your...
Right, and even if that machine were to malfunction, because machines malfunction, there's a slot in there that everyone puts their ballot in there, that gets taken to the central tabulator and is still tabulated. So you're really not holding people up from voting.
Okay, does it do the official count in that machine, or does it...
It does the official count in that machine.
Unless it screws up.
Right. And then that night, the election judge takes that part of the machine off the top of the thing. We put all the ballots in a bag, and they're sealed, and that gets taken down to the warehouse in Raleigh. So, yeah, that does get taken to the central tabulator there. But they are tabulated on that device.
Yeah. And if worse comes to worse, and you have to go all the way back to those original ballots,
right.
They're there.
They're there.
With pen markings on them.
With pen markings on them.
For every voter, for every vote.
And the argument I did hear from the Board of Elections was, and this was the previous chair, his argument to me was that people are terrible at filling out those ballots and that they don't always mark them properly. They'll put an X or they'll circle it or, they don't follow instructions exactly.
I can see that.
And that is true. But the tabulators, the counters, have gotten much, much better at deciphering that. For instance, there's one vendor that it will show every ballot a list from most confident to least confident marking. And they can look at the last 100 markings that are potentially, the machine isn't sure about.
Okay, so when they have to go recount or just check and say, we weren't sure, they aren't flooded with 700 ballots from a precinct. They can look at 10. Right.
And the machine will actually flag those and say, hey, we're not really sure about this. We need a human to look at it.
So it actually physically resort the paper.
Electronically, it sorts it because it takes an image of it. Right. And
okay. So it's taking a picture.
Right. So election workers can adjudicate right there on the screen. They can say, nope, that's clearly a mark for that candidate, right? They've got a giant X there. So that really isn't
have to worry
as much
about
of an issue.
Hanging chads and pregnant chads.
Correct. Yeah, those were calibration errors, and as long as your hand is calibrated, with your pen, and you hand mark, it's pretty good.
So, I mean, thinking of those Florida ballots, there have been so many ingenious ways to create ballots, and with those, it was a punch card. You had a little pin. You pushed the pin into the paper. You knocked out a supposedly pre-weakened little square.
Right.
And sometimes they didn't knock all the way out and they would hang off the end. And for some popular elections, the space underneath them filled up So you push and push and push,
Right.
and you couldn't push it out because
Right.
there's no place to push it to.
Right. And, after that election is when HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, came out, where we went to these machine ballots. And as an engineer, I think of it as, wow, they way over designed the solution to this, because as an engineer, you keep it simple, right? That's usually the best solution.
Yeah. I'm thinking when we went back to this machine that I was voting on back in Chicago, I'm thinking they were probably doing it that way because optical tabulation and counting was in 1972 wasn't available, didn't work.
That's true.
They didn't have it.
Right.
So now we have a combination of higher technology that lets you do that,
Right.
and lower technology that lets you vote
Right.
on something simple and verifiable. Yep. And why isn't everybody doing that?
Right. I think you're right. I think some politics plays into it. I'm hopeful that that our state board will continue to listen to the people, will continue to listen to the experts, and will make the right decision on the 23rd.
But when as I grew up in Chicago, election security or election fraud was just taking that stack of ballots and instead of delivering it to the central location, it just somehow got lost. That was election fraud back then.
Right. Right.
From a precinct, it was going to go the wrong way.
Yeah, I think that's what happened a lot in 2009 in North Carolina was keeping track of those ballots. There aren't great systems in place, and because states are allowed to essentially make up their own rules for it and counties have their own rules for it, there's not really somebody higher up that says you must do it this way. They come up with their own procedures, and hopefully those procedures will get better. They need to get better.
That, as I understand it, is one of the actual advantages of the way we do voting here in terms of security. It is so decentralized. Every county, every state, and down to every county does it themselves. And so you can't really screw with the American election system from the top down.
Well, that's not actually true because
Of course not.
there's one vendor that is in charge. Essentially their machines are used in over 78% of the United States. But also, if you look at how our political system works out, really another country or somebody would only need to hack a small number of counties to change the whole outcome of an election. So they don't really need to change every single, election everywhere.
That's the same math, the same strategy that goes into just winning an election.
Correct. Yeah.
Is it?
Right.
Don't try to win every place.
Right.
Just win the right ones. Don't try to hack every place.
Right.
Just hack the ones you need.
Right. Right. I mean, I think the thing that would probably frustrate hackers the most is if the U.S. went completely hand-marked paper ballot, because they would have no real way to hack anything. You could hack a tabulation center, right, where they're tabulating, but as long as you're doing post-election audits, you would catch that.
Yeah. So North Carolina is going to decide next week or so. When we booked this show, it was over a month ago. You thought this was all going to be done by now.
Yeah, I was.
You were thinking you're just going to report on the results.
Right. There a lot of unforeseen things happened, and so I'm glad we were able to stall it enough to get to this next vote.
Well, which way were things going? Is the state dragging its feet? What is making this thing take so long?
So, I mean, there's been a lot of change within the Board of Elections, and the vote looked like it was going to go one way. One of the members sort of voted a way that I think what people didn't realize he was going to vote that way, and then said he wasn't sure that he was voting on what he was voting on, so he wanted to redo that vote. But in the meantime, the chair ended up resigning, so they were kind of back to where they started from.
Something about a joke about women.
Right. Yeah.
Don't remember what the joke was.
It was of poor taste. Poor taste, especially to
good old boy North Carolina politics. Is that what we're hearing here?
What's that?
Is it like good old boy North Carolina politics?
I think this was more of a misogynistic joke that was told to a group of about 600 elections officials. I think the majority were women, so that.
Yeah. a good old boy North Carolina politician that
yeah.
just is not reconstructed yet.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of those people throughout my career.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, you too, me too.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand. It seems clear from the perspective of we engineer brain people.
Mm-hmm.
The paper ballot, lots of advantages,
Right.
not very many downsides.
Correct.
You need some assistance for accessibility.
Right.
That can be done.
Right.
But for most people, yeah, okay, so you got this real clear thing that says here's how to mark it,
Yep.
but I'm going to put an X or a check.
Right.
Yeah, or wet my finger or something.
Right.
And some people don't do it, and you can account for that.
Right.
Everything's lined up on your side.
Right.
Why is somebody lined up on the other side? Is it all politics?
I've asked the question multiple times, and I can't get an answer. Some of the board members gave me the answer of, yeah, I don't understand why people are arguing the other way, because all the evidence shows hand-marked paper ballots. The state board does have the authority to certify any machine, and then counties then can go and purchase those machines. But the board also has the authority to say, for all of North Carolina, everyone will use hand-marked paper ballots except those who cannot mark their ballot by hand.
They can do that.
They have the authority to do that.
So why aren't they?
I am hoping that they will, and I will be pushing them. Personally, I will be pushing them to do that.
So they haven't not done it yet.
They haven't not done
That's
it.
the decision that's coming up.
Right.
And we have to assign politics to not doing it that way.
So, one of the things when the board meeting just happened to fall on, it was at a hotel where they were having this conference, this annual conference of elections officials. So I actually had the opportunity to talk to elections officials from Guilford County and Mecklenburg County and all these different counties. And it seemed to me that they were getting incorrect information. And I asked them where they were getting their information.
FUD.
They were getting their information from their elections directors, who were getting their information from the vendors.
The vendors.
The vendors.
The
yes.
people that could make money.
The people that could make money.
Doing it
the complicated
the
way.
complicated, more expensive, less
right.
certain, less verifiable way.
Right. And one of the things that was one of those 3 a.m. woke me up thinking moments was that if you look on that barcode
That's how this podcast
ballot,
got started, by the way.
that barcode ballot, it actually has 2 records of voter intent, right? You have the one that's written out that's voter verifiable, and then you have the barcode. Now,
It's this thing here.
Yeah, the other ballots that you either hand mark or that the machine marks with the bubbles has one clear data point. Now, as an engineer, we were always told you don't have 2 data points in one system because they can conflict. You take one data point and everything comes from that. So I'm not sure what would really happen if an audit was done. And that's sort of the argument that people say, well, an audit would catch that. An audit would catch that. Okay, then what? What if an audit catches that there's somebody written on the ballot, but that barcode isn't there, or that barcode...
Yeah, which one's right?
Now, which one do you count now? Well, the vote is the barcode. So, but you're asking people to verify something that's not really even getting counted. So that's just, I don't know, not a design I would have.
Do people gravitate toward complexity just because it seems cooler? What would they...
I'm not sure who gravitates toward complexity, because the people who came, the voters who came to talk to the board, every single one of them who got up to speak did not want these barcode ballots. Every single one of them. And on the North Carolina State Board of Elections website, they put online all of the comments that people have written in. There was one, I think, that said, "Oh, we voted electronically in Pennsylvania, and I want to keep that." But all of the others,
Because I remember it fondly.
right? All of the others. Yeah, I moved here most recently from California, and when I went to go vote, it was a method that it was a computer. And I'm sure they thought I was crazy because I voted, and you hit vote, and then I'm looking underneath the machine, I'm looking all around it, and the election worker came up to me and she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, well, where's my ballot? And she said, oh no, you just voted. It's in there.
It's
and
in
it
there.
was the most unsatisfying voting experience I ever had.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that goes back to when I was looking originally at the paper ballot that I was filling out this oval and thinking,
Right.
I'm a technology guy. There's better ways to do this. I want to vote on a touch screen.
Right. Yeah.
Don't want to vote on a
No.
touch screen.
And I mean, I love technology. I'm an engineer. I love it. But
You're a rocket scientist, for God's sake.
But a lot of cases, analog is the best solution. Yeah, that's
I guess the touchscreen folks and all that, they're going to say, well, we can create as reliable an audit trail as paper for 10,000 times the price.
right.
But we're not going to say that because we make money off of it.
Right. And I think what I'd say to those people are that if you dig into the news a little bit more, you will find out that in North Carolina on election night in 2018, we had DHS at our headquarters. We had the National Guard. We had cybersecurity experts.
But that was exciting.
And they watched. I wasn't there. I wish I were there. They were watching in real time Iran, North Korea, Russia, IP addresses actively trying to penetrate the system on election night. And so, I mean, that's a huge wake-up call. And I think that the State Board of Elections, back in 2016, when they saw this happen, that was when they really started paying more attention to this. Yeah.
If I sit here on the TV thing and rail, you can't hack a paper ballot, am I just being a low-level, not very well-informed, typical knee-jerk reaction, or have I got the picture?
No, that is the picture. I mean, that's it. That's the best way to vote. I mean, it does seem like we should find some fancy way to vote on a computer. But if you think about it, even what you could possibly protect right now, we're going to be using these machines for 10, 15 years. In 10 years, is Russia going to come up with a new way to hack? Right? I mean, there are kids who are actively trying to gain, fame and notoriety to try to hack into these at Voting Village. So this is paper really can't be hacked.
Which, by the way, no machines survived at Voting Village at DEF CON. Nothing got
That
through.
is true.
I understand DARPA, the
Right.
folks that invented the internet along with Al Gore, had a machine that they wanted, that they thought would be unhackable.
Right.
But there were some problems with it that the kids actually couldn't use the machines
Right.
until the last day, so they didn't have
Yeah.
enough time.
Yeah, they weren't able to set them up.
Yeah. But DARPA's
in time.
trying to come up with an unhackable machine.
They are. And yeah, I mean, I guess have
DARPA's
at it,
DARPA's defense something research
right,
something. It's
right. Yeah,
no-
they got a $10 million grant to come up with a voting system.
Yeah. They built the first self-driving cars.
Right. I mean,
They do a lot. And they invented the internet.
right. And I think technology does have a place in counting votes because people are actually not great at hand counting votes. But if you use a machine to count the vote, you have to audit and make sure that those votes were counted properly. In North Carolina, we do certain audits. We don't do risk limiting audits yet. And I say yet because I think that the state will eventually go to risk limiting audits.
What is that?
A risk limiting audit. So right now what we do is a batch audit. So we take a percentage of precincts and we essentially hand count every ballot, every paper ballot, because we're in Wake County, right? We count every ballot and make sure that the numbers match. A risk limiting audit, what that does is it takes fewer number of ballots, but it spreads it across a bigger sample size. So you're taking 10 ballots from one precinct, 30 ballots from another precinct, depending on the margin of victory for that race.
Okay. So it's like polling.
Right.
It's
right.
where you take a sample.
Right.
And if the sample shows something, you can extrapolate that to the whole.
Right. And in North Carolina, I did bring this to their attention that it seemed kind of backwards that in North Carolina, we audit one race and it's always the top race on the ballot. So essentially, people know beforehand which race is going to be audited and they know that all the others are not going to be audited. I think that certainly you have to, I think you should audit all of the races.
Okay, so the speed trap is set up on I-40.
Correct.
I am going to speed on I-85.
if you wanted to.
Yeah. I'm so frustrated as a voter right now.
Oh, I wouldn't be frustrated. I mean, Wake County right now, and you mentioned Durham, we do use hand-marked paper ballots, and I think people can be confident when they go to the polls that their vote is going to be counted as cast, especially since
other
we'll audit.
counties doing it that way in North Carolina, or
I'm not sure how other counties are doing that. I've asked the State Board of Elections multiple times, and I have not gotten clear answers from them yet. I say yet because I will keep trying.
do you go as a representative of the League of Women Voters, or just Lynn?
I do both. Right. I do. When I want to, as my daughter calls it, when I want to be a free range chicken, I go on
Undercover investigator.
Right. So,
I like your daughter.
I do both because the league is doing amazing work, and we have a bigger platform, right, with the league. So, but then some of the other stuff I do that's more pointed, I will do on behalf of myself. Right.
Do you ever get a satisfactory answer or result?
I have actually, somewhat. Yeah. There are times when I do get a good answer.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
I mean, do you run into officials that appreciate what you're doing, that respect what you're doing, or do you run into arrogance?
Both. Right. Both. I mean, the times that I have made some movement are, talking to board members and having them sort of want to change what the certification specifications are, which is what they're going to be voting on the 23rd.
So the board members are talking about the Board of Elections.
State Board of Elections.
Of which there are, 9 members?
There are 5 members.
5 members.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So you're reaching up to the high levels of state government here.
I'm trying, yeah.
And they're talking to you.
Some of them, yes. Some of them.
I got on my list here, and you've mentioned that you had Homeland Security and federal agencies watching the vote as it happened in 2018.
Correct.
How much do we have to worry about the Russians and the North Koreans and other bad state actors? How do they penetrate our systems, and how much do we really have to worry about that?
So, I think one of the good examples of this is one of the last reports that came out from Congress was they equated it this way, that we would never ask local sheriffs to defend against the Russian army. But why are we asking local elections officials to go head to head with the Russian cyber army? And that's essentially what they're doing, because they're expecting that every county is going to have their own cybersecurity person, their own IT person that is essentially going head to head with these nation states that have far more resources than they do.
So maybe Wake County can do a little of this. Maybe Mecklenburg, maybe Guilford, Forsyth, and maybe Durham.
Right. I mean,
not Edgecombe.
Right. I think the thing that would frustrate hackers the most would be to use hand-marked paper. The thing about the counties right now that are using hand-marked paper is that it's great that they're using hand-marked paper, but once the State Board of Elections, if they do certify, say, these barcode machines, Wake County, if they get a new elections board down the road, that elections board could say, you know what, we're going to go to these machines and we're not going to use hand-marked paper anymore. So I am concerned about that.
And okay, so we got paper ballots. Mm-hmm. They can't really hack them.
Right.
What can they do to hack the other systems? Are they connected to the internet? Do they?
Right.
How do they get in and,
right.
and
so
do what they're going to do?
If you think about those scanners, those op scanners, or they're actually now digital scanners, those scanners have to have software put on them that will read those ballots to make sure that they count them correctly. So you have to think, okay, well, how is that software getting loaded on there? Georgia just went through a huge lawsuit, and it came to light that only 3 vendors in the whole state were programming those machines to look at the ballots. And they said those were far too few number of subcontractors, because even if just one subcontractor's machines were left online that somebody could get in and manipulate that code.
Yeah, so like you said, not so decentralized as we thought.
Right. And in North Carolina, we have one subcontractor who does that for the whole state.
So they would have to get in on the code early. It's not something they can do in real time.
For the precinct tabulators, no. One of the things that North Carolina has done was back even in 2016, we were submitting our election night results via modem on election night. And that...
What could possibly go wrong?
Right, what could possibly go wrong? So they had enough sense to say, you know what, we're going to hand carry that now to the central tabulators.
And once again, a major step back from technology.
Correct.
In the interest of security.
Right. I mean, so if you want to have an election that has integrity, you have to do the best for security. And sometimes the best for security is the low-tech option. Yeah,
unless you're in Chicago, and then that whole ballot thing can disappear somehow.
Right. You know, that's the other thing that people talk about. They say, well, it's air-gapped. It's air-gapped. Yes, but I think of it, like cross-contamination, right? If I take a disk out of one machine that has the software on it and I walk it across the room and put it into a counting machine to load that software, yes, it's air-gapped. There is space between the two machines, but that software is going from one machine to the other.
Yeah, air-gapped, for the not totally deep into computer geekiness, is a computer that has no wired connections other than plugging it into the wall for power. Maybe that's not even...
Right, no wired connections, but you do have to get that software on there somehow.
Right, so have you ever plugged has anyone ever handed you a USB, one of those USB thumb drives?
And that's exactly how
what
they
do. You plug it into your computer.
Right.
And that can have malware on it.
Correct.
That can automatically start itself when it's been plugged in, contaminate your computer. It doesn't come up on the screen and saying, contamination in progress.
Right. I mean, if you think about how easy it was for Volkswagen.
It does on TV, but it doesn't.
For even Volkswagen to game the system, right? They wrote code to make it look like they were passing emissions when they weren't. And they went in and you couldn't tell that the code was there. I mean, computer programmers know that you could potentially write a code to only run on within a certain time period and then to self-delete, right? But as long as we use hand-marked paper and audit our tabulators afterwards, I feel very confident that our elections are being counted as cast.
They're still going to try to find a way to beat that, but
I think
it's harder.
People have been trying to game the voting system since the beginning of time. Even with those pull, levers, people were sticking pencil lead in the back so they weren't rolling over. And the only reason they caught it was because those counters were getting stuck at like 1999, right? It took more force to roll it over. And then they would find
this thing that got the picture of.
They would find a pile of pencil, graphite in the back of the machine. And actually, our hand-marked paper is more secure than even that machine you voted on back in the 70s.
So now I'm not only frustrated and concerned about voting. It's just people in general.
Well, no,
people are terrible.
No, I think most people are good, and I think that the best thing that we can do as voters is to let the state board know that we care about how we vote and that we want hand-marked paper. And that we do not want barcodes that we can't verify.
Okay. And we need people like you who are sticking up for us and watching out for us.
I'm trying to spread the word, and the league is really trying to spread the word. And we're trying to make sure that North Carolina moving forward will have the most secure elections in the country. What
do you need everybody looking at the picture, listening to our voices? What do you need every one of them to go do that you might actually have a chance of getting them to do?
So I would say go online to NCSBE, North Carolina State Board of Elections.gov/contact-us. And even if you just go to their main website, the North Carolina Board of Elections, they have an interface where you can write in what your druthers are. Okay. And I would say people should write and say they want hand-marked paper ballots and they don't want barcode ballots.
So go to the North Carolina
Board of Elections website.
NCSBE, North Carolina State Board of Elections.
And there's a little contact us box, and you can fill in your information and submit a comment.
Hand-marked paper ballots, please.
Right, please. And risk limiting audits. Yeah, that's really, I think if they hear from enough people, hopefully they will continue to listen.
Okay. I think we've got the story.
Yeah.
We could end this here.
Right.
I don't want to.
Okay.
Two things. One related and one not.
Okay.
What's it like going to these board meetings and committee meetings, and were there hearings? What were the steps that you were observing happen?
Right. So the things that I will say what I didn't observe that I think should be observed. I think there needs to be more transparency, because somebody like me who's trying to get the information and is unable to get the information, just looking at the board as they're making their vote, I'm thinking, I have no idea how some of these people feel about this. They haven't had a public discussion in front of people. They haven't said why they're considering one machine over another. They haven't said why they're ignoring the, expert recommendations. So there's not enough transparency or communication with the actual voters. And so I think
the newspaper's not getting into the weeds with them. None of the TV shows are.
Right. I mean, the news does one or two blurbs, but they're not really, I think what most of us would like to see is for the State Board of Elections meeting to happen, for them, before they certify these machines, to have an open public discussion among the board members about why they're making the decision that they're going to make.
Okay. And they don't do that.
They don't do that. And the other thing that they don't do is usually when the agenda comes out, there's usually never public comment included in that agenda. And so what ends up happening is the president, Diana Wynn of our Wake League, will write to them and say, could we please have public comment? And then they usually will add public comment. But I mean, they should know by now we're going to ask for it every time. So
this is an appointed board, not an elected, right?
It is an appointed board, right?
Okay, so they're beholden to, answerable to the governor. And wasn't there something about getting confirmation they didn't have to be confirmed by the legislature, and now they do?
I don't think they have to be confirmed by the legislator. No, they're appointed by the governor, and then among the board members themselves, they appoint a chair and a secretary.
Okay. And it's something about, the party that's in power, it's 5 members. So you have 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and then one more of whoever's in power.
Right.
They don't go seeking
currently that's what it is. I mean, it's kind of been all over the place the last few years, 9 members, 5 members. Right now we're at 5 members. Right now there are 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
Okay. And with 3 Democrats, you'd expect good things to happen, but this is North Carolina. So,
I think this issue, I've talked to people from both parties. And for instance, the previous chair, Bob Cordell, he's a Democrat. The guy that made the joke. The guy who made the joke was a Democrat and really, really wanted these machines. So,
complicated, expensive machines.
Complicated, expensive machines.
And why he wanted that, only he knows.
Right, that is true. I did try to ask him.
Only he. This won't work for the audio audience. Right. That's the money thing. The fingers. It's
right.
It doesn't need campaign contributions. It's not an elected position.
It's not an elected position. And in other states, and I have not heard of this happening in North Carolina, fortunately, but in some other states, the vendors will send the staff members of election staff members, board of election staff members, to training session, to train different trainings, maybe in Scotland and Vegas. And so, because the systems are so complicated, there needs to be a lot of training for it. And, my argument is, well, we've been trained since grade school on how to mark a paper ballot. So really there's no training involved in that. So let's cut all this out and just go with the hand marked paper.
Oh yeah. Cause those complicated machines, you need a lot of education.
Right. I mean, they are very complicated. They really are.
And they seem cool and whiz bang.
I would personally, I don't think they're so cool, but
what I'm going back
Yeah.
to is remembering that first time I was doing those paper ballots, saying,
Yeah.
this seems like we could do better.
Right.
That was my mindset. It was an
Right.
honest mindset.
Right.
It was, from a geeky perspective,
Right.
but it's like,
Right.
I almost hesitate to bring this up, but how about online voting? No possible way.
So yeah,
I'd love to be able to do that.
So I took a class through University of Michigan a couple years ago. Alex Halderman, he's sort of known for being one of the first white hat hackers. And in his class, he pretty much says, at this point, and probably not ever, there's really no way to secure online voting because you would have to secure every single person's personal PC in their own home, right? Because it's coming to you via email, you're downloading something, right? So unfortunately, it's difficult for military to vote overseas. And so I do think that they do need to come up with better solutions for military to vote than online.
Yeah, if military was voting, well, they would be able to have one central system for each geographic area. I mean, they still have a line of people coming in to vote, but they have a system to connect back.
Or
and maybe
mail-in.
they can secure that.
Mail-in is also...
Okay.
Yeah.
Mail is...
Yeah. They need to work out some solutions to that for sure.
I mean, we also have mail-in ballots.
Sure. Yeah.
How does this connect to some of the other things that we've been worried about, gerrymandering and like the 9th district election fraud?
Right.
Is this, are they of a piece? Are they, or is it just because it's elections? They're similar.
I think it's similar in that, there are people who want to chop up the state into certain, into gerrymandered districts because if they skim a little off the top of each election, and I think it's happened on both sides of the aisle, unfortunately, that it's just a little, you shave off a little bit of the top of each piece, right? Ballot design. You can, like there was this case in Florida where there was a Senate race where the senator was at the bottom and then there was the opponent was at the top of the next column.
Next page.
Right. So,
column.
Ballot design, you skim a little off the top. Gerrymandering, you skim off the top. Voter ID, you skim off the top. Long election lines. There are ways to disenfranchise voters. And what the league really, their position is, and what we want to do is to enfranchise all voters and to give voters confidence that when they go to the polls, that their vote's going to be counted as cast. So we're trying to, people are trying to skim off the top, and what we're trying to do is make those corrections in each of these areas.
Okay, so the idea of the machine security,
right?
That they're not attacking that to do something with gerrymandering.
No.
But the background reason for doing all of it is sort of the same.
Right.
It's to skew an election that will then no longer reflect what people really wanted to go in and do.
Right. And it throughout history it's changed party to party. So it's really a nonpartisan issue. Yeah. It's election security and integrity, right? So
okay, so I was going to try to dig a story out of you.
Yeah.
Tell me about going to meet these guys. Is it all guys?
No, there's one female, Dr. Anderson. She's a professor. She's the female. I would say, going to the Board of Elections meeting, the thing that I just couldn't personally, I would go in, both times I've gone, I've spoken as just a voter. And about 30 seconds into my public comment, the previous chair would interrupt me and start asking questions that I'm not sure why he was asking them, except somebody said to me, well, maybe he's trying to cut your time, because you only get a certain amount of time, but they would always give me extra time. So it really wasn't, or maybe he just wanted to have, a discussion with me.
Was his question, did it relate to what you were talking about?
Yeah, I was talking about barcode ballots, and he was saying that, well, there are barcodes on all the ballots, and was sort of pointing to the timing marks that line up the ballot, which are completely different. So I reached out to a computer science professor in South Carolina and had him write to the chair and sort of give him a tutorial in what is the difference between barcodes and timing marks. So, I think from his perspective, he ran elections, back in the day when people didn't mark their ballots well, and they would spend a lot of time adjudicating ballots. One of the things that I asked him afterwards was, I said to him, you seem to, essentially believe the vendors completely that their systems are secure, but yet you don't believe them that they can adjudicate these ballots electronically. So you're sort of picking and choosing what you believe from them. And he didn't really have a whole lot to say about that.
That is, I was going to predict that you weren't going to get an answer. You're getting a lot of not getting an answer.
Right.
Do you take a little extra Excedrin or something for the headache that you're getting from this stuff?
No, I mean, I think when I go and talk to them, I really want to have them think about these things, sort of like with the barcode ballot. What will you do if an audit finds that these two don't match? Have you thought about that? Have you thought through this? The State Board of Elections really gets their information from the staff at the State Board of Elections. And so the staff is sort of picking and choosing what the board sees. And so I send in frequently to the board information, studies, things that I want them to see in case the staff isn't giving it to them. Turns out the staff has been giving all those things to them, and they do have that.
Do you work with the staff too?
I have reached out to the staff somewhat.
Because I think you're right. In most of these offices, the figurehead on top, the commissioner, the
Right.
senator, the representative,
Right.
they're not the expert on everything.
Right.
Their staffs
Right.
feed them what they
Right.
need to know.
Right.
And, hopefully they're astute enough to understand that and
Right.
have a good staff and all that.
Right. And, our State Board of Elections, these people have jobs. This is something that they do in addition to their
Those are a
40-hour
hobby.
work week. Myself, this is what I do full time because it's a sickness really. And I can't let it go.
Yeah.
But,
It's like this here podcast.
and even with this and just looking at this small issue of voting machines, it takes all my time. They have to think about how to run an election, right? They have to think about the whole state. They have to think about so many more issues than I'm just bringing to their attention. So it would be very difficult for them to understand everything without the staff, filtering through and giving them the information they need.
Do you get a sense of how the staff is going for these things, or are they just like a sponge one way? They'll listen to you and then do they feedback?
I don't get a lot of feedback. It's more just, hey, can you please disperse this to the board? And
Sure.
they have done that. But I don't really get feedback that says, oh yeah, we read this study and we agree or disagree with it.
Okay. And now the totally disconnected question, because you're a rocket scientist.
Okay.
In the news this week, there has been a story about something that happened in Russia, a rocket that blew up and spread radiation around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it wasn't a nuclear weapon, or at least that's not what they're saying. They were connecting the nuclear part of it to propulsion.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, nobody's got a lot of details about what happened, but they're slowly leaking out a little bit. And the U.S. considered something like this in the Cold War in the 60s, mm-hmm. and dismissed it. And I'm trying to think how you could use anything nuclear for propulsion. Because we fill rockets with chemicals
Right.
that are going to explode in a chamber, so all the energy goes out one way.
Right.
And that's how we make rockets go up.
Right.
And they've changed the chemical mixture from time to time,
Right.
but it's all basically been the same.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, but then again, I didn't work at Skunk Works or any of the other security cleared areas. But I do know that back in it was either 80s or 90s, it was before I worked for Ball Aerospace. Ball Aerospace decided that they wanted to do a rocket launch in Russia. And I worked with some of the guys who went on that rocket launch, and there's a lot that goes on in Russia that I wouldn't quite believe. Like, it was one of those situations where it was, oh, we know that you have a contract with us, but now you have to pay us some extra money to make sure that the spacecraft you want to launch gets from point A to point B. I mean, it was really sort of almost a mafia type system.
Yep.
And then unfortunately, the rocket exploded on launch, and the report that came out was that everything's fine, the rocket launched fine, nobody died, and yet that was not what the people on the ground were seeing. So, I'm not really sure what's going on in Russia, but I imagine that it's probably some of the same stuff.
What I'm not getting from our news media is nuclear doesn't provide propulsion.
Right.
Nuclear provides heat.
Yeah.
Heat and radiation. In power generation,
right.
A nuclear plant, and probably a lot of people don't understand this, all it does is boil water
right.
to make steam to turn the turbine. You turn the turbine, that's how you make electricity.
Right.
You make magnets move against each other. I think I'm impressing you with my level of technical knowledge. Right. Magnets move across wires, electricity flows through them.
Right.
That's how the Hoover Dam works.
Yep.
That's how nuclear plants work. The only thing that makes electricity without that is solar. Okay. Very directly creates electricity through a not very chemical process from the sun hitting a cell.
Right.
And it makes electricity.
Right.
Doesn't use anything up. Totally regenerable. With nuclear, it boils water.
Yeah. I saw.
How does that make a rocket go?
Yeah, I saw those same reports, and my thought was, it seems more likely that it was a nuclear missile that exploded.
You think?
I can't even fathom how you would use nuclear for propulsion.
I mean, even it boiling a lot of water in a rocket,
right,
and making the steam go out the back end through the nozzle. That is not going to make a rocket
water's pretty
fly.
heavy. You wouldn't want to launch. You don't really want to launch heavy parts.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I just wanted to check since I had
you're on the right track.
Since I had a rocket scientist here.
I think you have a good amount of skepticism.
Okay. This has been great.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is not the number one issue that's been floating around the news. We got Jeffrey Epstein, and we got shooters in Ohio and Texas, and that's not what everybody's paying attention to right now. But it needs their attention because this is going to affect you more than all those others do.
Well, it's not even going to affect. It's going to affect us, but I mean, it's going to affect. If your kids are at least 8 years old, it's going to affect the way they vote. Right? I mean, so this is going to affect us for a long time.
Yeah. So it's worth paying attention to.
Absolutely.
It's worth going to the North Carolina State Board of Elections website.
Right.
And clicking the comments button.
Right.
And saying paper ballots.
Well,
and let's see.
Specifically hand-marked
paper ballots.
Right.
And let's see, what was it? The
risk limiting audit.
Yeah,
and no barcodes.
Yeah, no barcodes.
Yeah, the vendors have they've turned this paper ballot into this. They consider that a paper ballot, the barcode. So
they're just latched onto your words.
Right. So we're saying, no, you have to actually say hand-marked paper ballots. Hand-marked paper ballots. Okay. And also, they're taking, the state board is taking public comment on the 23rd. So if voters show up, they can sign up to give probably, I don't know how long it's going to be. They usually give about 2 to 3 minutes of public comment. So voters.
Where and when does this happen?
This is August 23rd at 1 p.m. at the Dobbs Building in downtown Raleigh.
Okay. Yeah. So you can sign up in advance, I assume.
It's I haven't seen the sign up on the agenda yet. I'm sure.
Because why make this easy?
Right. There's usually a sign up at the door that it's first come, first serve. Right.
I've been to some of those things.
Right.
And I've also done the things of commenting on various legislation and proposals online. And I'm assuming my comment is given the full weight that it deserves.
Yeah, I think our state board ignored. Actually, I think it did sway them a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
I really do. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we'll see. This is not rocket science.
It's really not. It's one of those cases where the cheapest and simplest solution really is the best solution, it's kind of a no-brainer. So
Right. This has been episode 67. It's been a civics lesson, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. My vote counts. Right? Right? I guess I want to make sure it does. You are Lynn Bernstein, an aerospace engineer, and what was the connection with the League of Women Voters on the committee?
So I am a member of the Election Protection Committee.
Election protection. Fun
Committee.
thing to say.
Yes.
All right.
Fun thing to be a part of. So we want more people to join the league and be a part of it.
Right. Thank you for coming here to talk about it.
Thank you.
I am Gary Pierce. I am a voter, a registered voter in the state of North Carolina in Wake County. You can look me up. I'm unaffiliated. And that is it for this episode of the Triangle Talk Show. I guess I don't need to say anything else. We close the show. I always give my guests the opportunity to help close the show. It's a simple thing to do. You got some technical background. My technical background is all communications. Okay. Yours is real science.
No, communications is real science.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. We'll see if you can get this. It's a 3-word sign off. The audience is now going, he says this every time.
Okay.
It's a 3-word sign off. I'll do the first 2 words. I'll bet you can get the last one, and I'll get ready to make the YouTube thing go away. I hover over the thing. Over and
out.